Torrential rainfall continues for Central America from a tropical disturbance on today's Tropical Weather Bulletin. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for June 16th. So, we still have no active tropical cyclones, but we're still looking at the Western Atlantic and Eastern Pacific for signs of development over the next few days, which signals seem to be getting a bit stronger. We have a few areas of interest to be looking at right now. In the Atlantic, we have two that are fully in the basin and one that will be entering in from the Eastern Pacific. 20% for a system that could be heading towards the Florida East Coast and towards Georgia and the whole southeastern region there. A 30% area of interest along the coast of Mexico right now in the Gulf of Tehuantepec, which could develop into a tropical cyclone in the Gulf of Mexico. Added that with another 10% area to its east, and you could argue that percentage chance is a little bit higher. National Hurricane Center going all the way up to 60% with a chance there for that western Gulf of Mexico area. In the Western Pacific, things are pretty quiet right now. A few little areas of thunderstorm activity, but really not too much to talk about. A few storms along the coast of China and one or two along the Philippines. In the North Indian Ocean, it's also pretty quiet here as well. Even that monsoonal cloud cover has abated quite a bit there. We've just got a few scattered thunderstorms across the whole of India and Bangladesh there from southwest to northeast. And for what it's worth, in the southwest Indian Ocean, there's very little going on here now. It's a quiet basin at last, a dead basin, as we're into the off-season down in the southern hemisphere. It certainly had a good run though this year, didn't it, in the southwest Indian Ocean? Well, let's take a look at this area of interest then, which is sort of traceable. We can't really find a centre on it, but it's got convection blowing up near where you would think a centre might be. It's about 169 kilometres from Cabeza de Toro, 179 from Salina Cruz, 289 from Puerto Escondido, 347 from Oaxaca, the city of Oaxaca, and 388 from Coatzacoalcos further north along the coast of the Gulf of Mexico. So this system could be piling on through northwards, and real signs that either this system or some of its energy could become a tropical cyclone in the Gulf. Here's satellite imagery of it right now, and it's not just this system itself, but look to the east there as well. Really a line of storms that are marauding across the coast of Guatemala and El Salvador, producing extremely high amounts of rain there. An orange alert has been issued in El Salvador for persistent rainfall, and really when you look at the models on top of anything that's already occurred so far, we're still looking at gigantic amounts of rain possible in a few areas. Looking at the wide shot there across that whole region, it is a very disturbed area, isn't it? Lots of storms everywhere, really, when you look at that wide shot. Here's the Eastern Atlantic, that big front moving across from southern Florida all the way up to Canada now. That on the top end of that is what was left of Invest 90L. Down in the Caribbean zone there, you can see a few storms also blowing up in the southwestern Caribbean as well, although really very little organization going on there, just a lot of rain and fluster. And in the Eastern Atlantic, really very little going on here at all. Eventually we'll start to see some more activity over there, but not yet. And there's another wide shot at the Eastern Pacific. There are some big bursts there of convection from that main system that we're watching, with cloud tops bursting into the minus 80s in a few spots. So certainly we're looking at very high rain rates under that. There's the Western Pacific, a little bit of a swirly thing going on there, not tropical in that subtropical zone there, but really very little going on in the Western Pacific. North Indian Ocean, Bay of Bengal, a few storms blowing up inland further towards the north there in Bangladesh mainly, and in the Arabian Sea, just a few little bits here and there off the coast of India, blowing along with the wind there, moving westerly. And this is radar imagery of the Central American region. It's not complete radar, of course, but you can certainly see places like El Salvador, eastern El Salvador especially, getting a lot of persistent rain there, training in over the course of many hours. This is precipitation charts from satellite, showing a little view there as to what might be occurring down there. And these are the wind shear graphics, so showing that there's a big ridge of wind shear there in the south part of the main development region, and there's a little gap in the Caribbean Sea and maybe in the Gulf of Mexico looking okay. Eastern Pacific looking alright as well along the coast of Mexico, wind shear being generated by some of these storms, I reckon. And in the Western Pacific it is looking pretty scant in terms of wind shear, so any systems that enter that main area there, they should have a decent time. Well, sea surface temperatures is another metric to determine how conducive the conditions are, and they're very warm in parts of the Eastern Pacific where that system is right now. It's 30 to 31 degrees Celsius at least. And the Gulf of Mexico getting really warm there as well now, with a few spots up to 31 degrees Celsius, and the Caribbean Sea anywhere along the coastal regions of islands and land masses there looking good, up to 30 degrees Celsius. And in the Western Pacific, temperatures looking very good off the coast there of the Philippines, up to 32 degrees in one or two spots either side, and warming up further north as well towards Japan. Hong Kong getting around 27 degrees Celsius now as well, quite toasty. And in the North Indian Ocean also looking pretty good, 28 degrees as a baseline, with quite a few areas warmer than that there across the whole basin. Southwest Indian Ocean definitely cooling down. We're going to still look at these southern hemisphere basins here around Mauritius. Temperatures down to 25 degrees now. Along the coast of Australia, those temperatures obviously decreasing as well. Still a few spots holding on to 26 degrees Celsius waters along the coast, especially near Darwin and on the top end of the far north Queensland. And the South Pacific, a few areas there as well cooling down as well. Fiji, the Eastern Islands just about holding on to 26 degrees Celsius, and the Southern Vanuatu Islands also falling below now. Well, compared to normal, this is what it looks like in terms of anomalies. Those red zones well above average, and in the Atlantic you can see quite a bit of that, up to towards 4 degrees above average, I would say, in a few parts of the main area of the Atlantic, and the Gulf of Mexico up to about 3 degrees above. Eastern Pacific is generally looking above average as well in the main area of development, and in the Western Pacific also looking good there, around 2 to 3 degrees above average as well for large parts there of the main area of the basin. Oceanic heat content looking extremely monstrous now in the Western Pacific, with extremely high amounts of oceanic heat content, which is really massive amounts of fuel there for potential rapidly intensifying storms. Eastern Pacific not quite as much as it used to be actually, but still looking okay. The Atlantic really starting to get up there as well, especially in the Caribbean Sea. Off Jamaica still that hot spot right now, and a massive spot further north in the Gulf of Mexico where the loop current is. Also a few spots growing off the coast of the United States now, off the east coast of the Carolinas along the Gulf Stream. Take a look at the computer models right now, the GFS for the next 5 days, showing that Eastern Pacific system at first, and then this Atlantic system in the Gulf of Mexico forming pretty quickly into the Gulf there, and tries to become a tropical cyclone. Then you've got that other system moving up towards the coast of northern Florida and Georgia towards the end of that 5-day period as well. You watch it moving in from the Atlantic there, almost by stealth. A rather small system, relatively weak. Both systems though could deliver tropical storm force winds for quite some time to some of these areas, including in Texas there as well. And on top of that then, rainfall expectations for all of these areas then. First of all, in Central America, we're looking at very high amounts of rainfall for large parts of the region there along the coast, especially El Salvador getting the worst of it by the looks of things. But look at that train of red there moving into Texas as well in that 7-day period. But also over 40 inches of rainfall for parts of Central America there. That's over 1,000 millimeters, and in lots of other places, all those red zones really are over 10 inches of rainfall, 250 millimeters, and parts of Texas are included in that as well. Well, in the longer range, day 5 to 10, a second system tries to get itself developed in that same area in the western part of the Gulf of Mexico. There it is, actually looks better than the first one on the model run. And there it is, hugging the coast for quite a bit just before moving inland over very far northern Mexico. So once again, the Atlantic could be quite busy here, and then a little system there in the Eastern Pacific is almost a rinse and repeat of what we've got right now, actually. So who knows whether that will happen. We'll just take it one system at a time. And in the Western Pacific, Maybe some early signs that we might see some development here as well in the South China Sea. Another one quite similar to how we saw Melixi take place. Another one that's in a similar area, just about moves into the Gulf of Tonkin and then into Vietnam. Whether that happens or not, also still quite far out there. That is probably the 23rd, 24th, so it's over a week. So I wouldn't be counting on that to happen at all just yet. But certainly a busy and wet time in the Western Atlantic. Scan the barcode and that will take you through to the Force 13 merch store, where you can take a look at all our items as well as our full season and individual storm animations on request. And our Still Waiting for Hone t-shirts still available as well. We do have an individual storm animation that's been requested coming out later in the week, I think. And this is the Silly Range then in the Western Pacific, a system there that develops very towards the end of this run. As we've been seeing, we saw this a few days ago, it's been consistent every time with something forming right at the end, so I wouldn't be so sure about this. This is the first and second day of July, a system really getting quite large and strong as it moves through the Mariana Islands and then on into the Philippine Sea. I think that's a bit of a pipe dream there from the GFS, but who knows, stranger things have happened. Well, on this day, we're looking back at the development of Hurricane Blas in 2022, just 2 years ago, although it might feel like shorter. Blas was moving off towards the west there over the eastern Pacific. We also had the development of Tropical Storm Celia, which was much further east and was circling around at first and then started to move westwards, following in Blas's footsteps in the end, becoming only reaching tropical storm strength. Blas peaked as I think it was 80 or 85 mile per hour hurricane, and that was its period of intensification there on that image. Well then, this is where we're at right now. Alberto is the first name on the Atlantic naming list this year. In the Eastern Pacific, the first name is Aletta, and in the Central Pacific, it's still Hone. Are we surprised that we still haven't had a named storm yet? I think we might be. In the Western Pacific, the next name is Gaemi. In the North Indian Ocean, it is Asna this year. And indeed, it is 30 years since we last had such a late start in the Atlantic and Eastern Pacific combined. 1994, when we had the formation of, I think it was the same naming list actually, Aletta. In the Australian region, the next name is Robin. The Southwest Indian Ocean, it's Jeremy. And in the South Pacific, it's Pitta. That's all from today's Tropical Weather Bulletin. I expect we'll have more to come tomorrow.
Become an Ultimate Fan today.